In this video, we're working on exercise 33.9. This is in the networking chapter of our Java book, and this is an application in which we are creating a client and a server chat application. Now what I've done is I've already coded through the application, so it's not going to be a step-by-step walkthrough like it typically is. Really, it's more of a presentation of the solution that hopefully will help you with your version of the same project. So I'm going to actually start by looking at the server side of things, and you're going to notice that I'm switching between the client and the server. You can see how I have them named, and you can see at the top of the application is actually identical because really the graphical interface is identical. We are creating basically a window that has two windows. So one will be a read-only window where we see messages that come in, and the other one will be the window where we can type a message and hit enter and then have it up here. So we start by first adding all of our libraries. So like I said, I'll look at the server first. So these are all the libraries that we'll be using. We are extending application because we are writing this in Java effects. And then to begin with, create a couple of, actually more than a couple, several private global variables that we need. The first two, actually the second two, are the text areas where we're going to type into, and then we also have to create data output and input streams, and those need to be on the global level to allow for communication between all the components. From there we go ahead and we create the start method that's going to contain all our graphical elements. So what I chose to do here is I worked with a grid pane. So the grid pane was set up, and then we put in the editable, non-editable, see the false setting here for the server. We added some labels. We made it a scroll pane so that if the content gets long, we can change it or see it. And then I also set up a separate area for the client. Now, if you look at the client version of the same thing, it's going to basically be the converse, but we'll come to that, back to that in just a moment. From there we create our scene and stage and populate it with the grid that we created. And then from there we go into multi-threading mode. So then we instantiate a new thread, and then all of this of course is going to sit inside a set of curly brackets. And on top of it all we are putting in a try-catch, and that's to enable some error handling just in case there is no communication between the two components, so that the program doesn't crash in the process. So one of the first things that we do is we create the sockets, and in this case I chose to use port 8080 just to make sure it wasn't interfering with other web-based components that we were running. We do the run later with the append text, and then we also set up a socket to accept a connection as well. We then take our new data input streams and output streams and attach those to the socket, and then we run a loop that basically sits there and waits for stuff to come in from whoever's attaching to this particular server, and then anytime that something happens it grabs it and appends the text to the chat window pretty simply, and then it adds a new line every time a new message comes in. And we have a little catch statement there, and then finally the closing little start thing that gets the thread going. We also set up an event handler here for the text client area, meaning the area where we would type, and then we get the key code here of enter. So basically you type something in and it waits to see if we pressed enter, and if we press enter then of course the message will get sent, but first what it does is it takes and it runs the trim command, which if you remember that one, it trims leading and trailing spaces so we don't have a bunch of empty space going through, and then it does inside of an if statement runs a try where it does try to send the information. Once again, the reason we do that is so it doesn't crash if it doesn't work. And then we are taking the from server and to server, which we instantiated above, and we are getting different input streams that are going to it. And then an additional try-catch at the bottom that allows us to grab the text and then ultimately flush it. All right, that's really the crux of the server. So once again, I'm just going to scroll to the top if you're trying to copy the code. This is the first part, and then from there, it's the second section, and then once again, kind of the bottom section. It looks like I'll have to scroll one more time to get all the rest of it. And I think between all the different little things that I just showed you, you should be able to grab all that code. Now the client is really not all that much different. So let's just start by noticing the fact that we really create all the identical items at the top. Same type of approach. And in this one, we have a few more comments. Same exact approach. In fact, I'm not sure how much code here is all that different if you do a side-by-side comparison. It's just the naming of variables to adjust for the fact that it's coming from a server or going to the client. So this is the top part of the thread and the catch. It's coming up here. And then the bottom part here where the client does the sending. And I'm going to tell you that this is probably a little bit more sophisticated approach than maybe you're attempting to do. The try catches are helpful, but you may have opted to work around those. But otherwise, this is really the entirety of the code. Once again, I'll scroll through it again so you can screen capture it or whatever you're doing to copy it down and try to make it work for yourself. So this is the top part. Next section. Next section, and the bottom. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and run this, and when you're running these types of applications, the first thing I'm going to do is actually run the server. That's what you're supposed to do, although I'll tell you that I don't think it really matters much with this application, but it's typically considered better to run the server first, and then switch over to the client and make that one run. And now let's pull them both up on the screen at the same time. So when you are looking to type a message, you just type in the lower box, and then hopefully it appears on the other end, and you can see that it didn't. So I just had it working just a few minutes ago, so I'm going to try to reinitiate this again. So maybe it does have an impact on what order you're doing it in. And for some reason, I think I saw something flash up on the screen here. So I do have a problem I need to fix. So let me just pause the video here for a second and figure out what's going on. All right, I figured out what the problem was. It turned out that I was running an instance of the server and the client in the background on my second screen here that I didn't realize were still running, and it really kind of goofed things up. But I did manage to close those down, and I also restarted Eclipse just to make sure that everything was okay. And then I started the server first and the client next, and you can see that it also puts information in here, so that's my clue that it's now going to work. So here I am in the client. I'm going to just type a little message, and it pops up over on the server, and then I'll type one over here, and it pops up over there. So now I can have a conversation. Now, even though this is a pretty primitive little thing, and we're working with basically a local implementation here, the thing that's pretty fascinating about this is, we're really simulating client-server because there's no server sitting in between. We're operating on the same machine, so that's why we can just put in a port address and it works. But if we were working something like this on a remote system, we would actually have the server software running on the server, and it would serve more of a conduit for sending information back and forth. But that, in essence, is the application and the solution for it. Like I said, you may have done it a little bit differently, but for the most part, this is the application. All right, good luck on your coding.